So we're going to start off the day with Dr. Debbie Durance, who's the Chief Data Officer from Gwinnett County Public Schools, talking about an introductory look on Gwinnett data governance, IT security, and IT management, which I'm really excited to hear about. Really big fan of Gwinnett County. Gotten to meet a lot of their people over the years that we got to physically get out and talk to people.
Well, good morning, everyone. While we're working on getting video up and going, I just want to say good morning to all of my colleagues, many of whom I know are here in Georgia, and I will jump right into kind of the story of Gwinnett. And I know...
Yep, we can see your screen now. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yep, we see your screen and we also see your live cam, so we're good to go.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so as many of you know where Gwinnett is, and you know that we are roughly 10% of the student population in the state of Georgia. And as happened with many of you this year, when we look at our student body, we're a little bit smaller than we were in previous years. We have a little over 177,000 students. You can see the demographic breakup of our students. We are a very diverse district. We have 141 schools, 80 elementary schools, 29 middle schools, 23 high schools, and then 7 schools that we call our specialty schools. Those might be multi-grade schools, also include our online campus school, and then we also have 2 charter schools that are a part of the district. I want to spend just a few minutes talking about the structure that we have here in Gwinnett. Several years ago, our superintendent recognized that it was important for us to have a real focus on student data. And so he took what was then our Information Management and Technology Division and divided it into data governance, information security, and information management and technology. And I had the opportunity to work with the data governance team with a focus really being on our student data. And so I want to spend some time really talking about what does that mean and how do we work collaboratively. Our job is to support the work of our teachers, our school leaders, and our district leaders every day in making sure that they have the necessary information and resources to provide opportunities to our students. And we know that this year is unlike no other. The world really changed for all of us in March of last year. On March 12th, we had all of our students in person and then told our teachers to bring their laptops home. And as with many of you, that was the last time they were in our buildings. At that point, we had to start thinking about what are the pieces of information, what are the processes, what are the tools that we have in place that can best support our teachers. We had been involved in an initiative to really transform teaching and learning for a number of years. You'll hear from one of my colleagues, Dr. Matt Waymack, later today about what that work looks like. So we had an infrastructure there for teachers, but we knew that that was only a part of the story. We knew that for our students, for our parents, there was information that they needed. There were tools that we needed to get in place for them to be able to fully engage in this experience. As with many of you, most of our instruction in the spring was asynchronous, although we had peaks where we had as many as 85,000 students on concurrently, which was larger than we'd ever had in our LMS at one time. But we knew that we were going to have to really reflect as things moved on in the spring to think about what would things need to look like moving forward. And so as we thought about coming back to school, we really had to focus on what should school look like, recognizing that instead of perhaps this being a short period of time, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month, that this was going to be what school would look like moving forward. And it was really important that we meet the needs of all of our students in the school district and provided parents with a choice in what that learning would look like for their students. We knew that digital instruction would play a critical role regardless of where students were for that instruction. In order to make sure our teachers were well prepared, we did delay the school opening by 1 week and provided teachers with additional planning to be ready for the start of school. Our first 2 weeks were all digital for all students, and then our parents were able to choose whether students would be coming in person for 100% of the time or digital for 100% of the time. And you can see that for those that chose in person, we had a phased-in return to school with grades kindergarten, 1st, 6th, and 9th, as well as our special education self-contained students coming back our first week on August 26th. And then each of the next 2 weeks, we brought groups of students back so that by September 9th, all grades were back in school. As of today, our current percentages of students are about 55% still remaining in an all digital environment, and then about 45% in person. That has fluctuated a little bit during the semester, but has remained relatively constant. For our teachers and staff, what this has really meant for them is that they've had to leverage the tools and resources that we have in a digital learning environment to support not just their digital students, but also their in-person students. And we want to make sure that those tools are providing not only what students need, but in a safe and secure way. So there are some key questions that we as a district really had to approach working collaboratively together. We had to think about, what do our teachers, school leaders, and district leaders need to better understand about our students? And so when we started to ask those questions in March, there were things we needed to know that we never had to ask before. For example, over the last 5 days, which students have not logged in at all to our student portal? Or which students haven't logged in to our learning management system? Then we realized that 5 days was an awfully long time for students to not be engaged. So we need to know that information from the previous day. And then in addition to understanding if they're logging in, we needed to know what types of devices are they using? Are they able to access that information on a laptop or a Chromebook, which we know really leads to the ability to fully engage? Or are they on something like a smartphone? As we started to look at engagement, we had students using everything from a PlayStation to a Kindle to any device that you could imagine that would connect to the internet. And so we knew we needed to get resources in the hands of our school leaders so they could identify those students and then deploy technology. We knew also that our parents were now much more than they'd ever been our partners in instruction. So we needed to make sure that our partners had information that they hadn't had before. So we worked to roll out an updated parent portal that would allow our parents to be able to see not only their grades for students, but the ability to see, were they logging in every day? Could I see the upcoming assignments? Could I see more information about those assignments? In addition, we worked with schools and clusters, and for us, we organize our schools around the high school that the schools feed it, and we call that a cluster. So that parents that had students in multiple schools would be able to have the same experience when they engaged in that digital learning environment. We know that all of us are yearning to have the opportunity to make sure that our teachers have the most critical information about their students and their understanding of learning in their hands. And we know that this is a journey that we're all on, and we're not where we want to be, but we are making progress on that journey. We know that there are tools that are playing a much bigger role in instruction than they have before, that we're now working to get data available for our teachers, including access and engagement in platforms like Zoom, Google Meet, Teams, and others, so that teachers can see not only those students that are logging on, but obviously how much they're logged on and how much they are engaged in that work. We know that really to get to the level of understanding that we need to have to truly transform the experience of our students, we have to be able to connect the data that lets us see how are they engaging, what are they engaging with, and then what are the outcomes for those students. We know in our current context it is challenging to be able to understand what do our students know maybe differently from what their parents know, as we know that sometimes our parents want to help more than maybe we would want them to. So that's something that we continue to work on, and having good measures of student learning and being able to understand what type of technology those students are engaging in, what resources they're engaging in that lead to success. For those students that maybe aren't as engaged, maybe they're not turning in the assignments that we would want them to turn in, or they're not logging on to those live instruction activities, what do we know about those students? Are there particular types of activities that teachers can engage in that do promote that student to be an active learner? Are there strategies that are more successful with those students? And so those are areas that we're gathering understanding for. And we know that as we continue to walk through this data journey together, we will have to continue to figure out what are those most critical questions and who needs that information. We're all drowning in information that we get from all of our different systems, and it's so critically important that we, as the leaders in data and understanding, can provide answers to the most critical questions and not just provide lots of data and dashboards. We know that right now change is difficult. We've had so much change in the last 9 months that anything that we can do that helps fold in things we've learned, things we've seen, things we've used is a benefit. So we continue to look to areas where we've already had resources in place and try and enhance and engage our leaders in leveraging those where maybe they haven't as much before. Perhaps they had a dashboard that showed them the types of tools their teachers were using, and it was more about adoption and less about engagement. And we know that that engagement is really what's critical now. And we know that sharing what's working in each of our districts is really what's going to lead us to that key critical understanding of, in this context of having school largely be in a digital platform for so many of our students, what works best and what works best for different students. As we know, just like in a traditional classroom, strategies that work for one student may not work for another. And so we're working to have better ways to understand at a granular level, whether it's a particular learning object in our repository or it's a particular tool that teachers are using. Where do we see that effectiveness? And so we're continuing to work through this and work alongside our teachers and other technology leaders in our district so that we can make sure that our teachers next month and the month after continue to have better and better information that they can use, because we're all learning together. One of the key areas we have been very mindful of, though, is recognizing that we don't necessarily know when we roll something out, when we provide something, if it will be successful or not. So we've been very careful to try to limit areas where we necessarily compare what it looks like at one school versus another. One school may decide that they're going to focus on a particular type of lesson structure, and we don't know yet in many instances if that is more effective than another. So we really want to focus on providing information that leads to more questions, because we know that the answers are in the people doing that work on the front lines each and every day. And so really what we're focusing on is, how do we make sure that the work of today prepares us for tomorrow? We know that many of us were in the work of digital transformation before the pandemic came. And while we know that in many cases it has accelerated areas that we might have gotten to in 2021, 22, or 23 that have come to us in 2020, we know that collaborating across our teams and across our districts is really what's going to help us continue to provide that bright future for the students that you see in the picture below. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions specific about the work that we do in data governance or here in Gwinnett County Public Schools. But I know that my colleagues across the state have just as many success stories that you could share about the work that your teachers are doing and really leveraging the information in front of them and realizing how they continue to evolve and change and meet the needs of their students.
Okay, so this is Leilani. I'm going to look at what's happening with questions. So everyone that's on the line right now, please feel free to type in questions or raise your digital hand. I'm watching for raised hands right now. And I'll ask a question of you. It looks like what's really happening with you is you're going through in Gwinnett some rocky, sort of change, and you're probably witnessing some things that are, pointing to a different sort of structure for some of the kids, like you said, that are not learning well under a certain methodology of, digital or, hybrid or however it is for that particular one. What are the things that you're seeing? What kind of feedback have you gotten so far? And probably, I'll just say, some of it is unique to maybe one child, and maybe you can't extrapolate that. But what are you seeing?
So I would clarify that I wouldn't say that things are necessarily rocky in Gwinnett. I would say that we're all navigating some known and unknown areas. One of the things that I think has been helpful for us is that we do have a lot of years of working in a digital environment and seeing tools and structures that work well. I would say that one of the things that can be challenging as we think about this environment for some students is that they might be in a household with a number of different students, and they might be the oldest in a house helping younger siblings. And so how do we make sure that that older student is well supported while they're also helping their siblings? That's certainly not unique to Gwinnett. I think that probably exists in all of our districts. And I think it's being able to reach out to those families and to those students and meeting them where they are. We have provided our students with a lot of recorded video lessons that if they can't engage in the live instruction, they are able to access that. And for some students, that certainly helps fill what might be a challenge in competing priorities for all of our families in these challenging times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So really, what you're in the middle of is more of a refinement of something that's working, and then you're spotting ways to refine.
And I think that's a great way to shape that, Leilani. One of the things we have been for many years in Gwinnett is really a continuous quality organization focused on leveraging those quality tools and finding opportunities to improve each and every day. And so using that same improvement cycle in this context, we just look at things a little differently.
Okay, cool. So we have a question coming in from Takesha Hollis. Takesha, I'm going to unmute you to ask it directly. I'm going to make sure you're unmuted. You're self-muted, Takesha. If you can unmute on your side, you can ask your question or make your comment. If you're shy, then I can ask for you. All right. So, Dr. Durance, the question is, what systems will you continue after full face-to-face return? And the second part, what tools do you use that have provided the most success?
Sure. So that's an interesting question. As we think about what full face-to-face return looks like, we've continued to have discussions to say we're not sure that all students will choose in the end to remain face-to-face when that opportunity is there. We do have an online campus, and we anticipate that we may have more students that are interested in that moving forward. I will say that obviously the leveraging consistency in our LMS, we use D2L for that, has been very helpful, and using a lot of the formative tools where we can understand where students are in measuring that has been very helpful. I think that you really can't replace that interaction between a teacher and a student. And so our teachers leveraging video platforms, whether it was Zoom or Google Meet or Teams, to engage with their students, to be able to ask questions, know how to leverage things like breakout rooms so that students can still collaborate together and have that same experience that they would have if they were in the classroom, I think is really important. Teachers have been really creative in putting together groups that include students that are in person and digital at the same time so they can each share in each other's experience. And I think that that's been really helpful. I think also communication can't be stressed enough. Leveraging all the different various ways that our parents can be connected with our teachers and our teachers can be connected with our students has really been beneficial.
Okay, great. Anything more to the question about other specific tools? I mean, are you seeing a more advanced usage of, say, supplemental materials and logins into like book repositories or, you know, the
Sure.
math
Yes,
courseware?
we have had significant increase across all of our digital tools, whether it be our content repository. We use Safari Montage. Our digital textbooks and resources certainly have increased. We also have a number of our teachers and schools that do leverage a number of the tools in Google, whether it's Google Classroom or other resources there. That has definitely increased. We do have a third-party vendor vetting process that we use here in our district, and so for tools beyond that that aren't district adopted but might be a school resource, they go through a vetting process in which we verify the data privacy and security requirements that the vendor must comply with, and then ensure that we're aware of any data that might be shared. And so teachers also have a list of those resources that they can leverage and know which ones are safe to use with their students. We've actually had an increase in the parents, as you can imagine, that are interested in those supplemental tools that are being used. And we have a variety of those that schools are leveraging depending on their specific unique needs that they have for their students. But I think across the board, our schools have really focused on actually narrowing the number of different tools to simplify the experience for their students and for their parents so that they know each day, this is where I go to find my assignment, this is how I'll submit my assignment, this is how I can get help, this is where I'll get feedback. While we have a lot of different tools at our disposal, what we found is that being consistent in that has made such a difference for students being able to really dig into those assignments.
Great. All right, so we have a hand raised from Roger Jacobson. Looks like he's from Muskogee. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I just what you're saying is very similar to our experience here of everything that you've been saying. I just had a quick question on have you put together any resources for helping parents with your digital resources? I mean, we've done that, and we're continuing to go that direction, especially at the lower level. But I was curious whether Gwinnett did that also.
We have, and you know, I think it's so interesting as we see some of the parallel paths that we're all taking. We started an initiative in our curriculum and instruction division entitled AKS at Home. AKS is our academic knowledge and skills, and that's what we call our curriculum. And so AKS at Home has worked with our parent instructional coordinators, and those are outreach specialists that we have at a number of our schools. And we have live events that parents can be a part of. We have resources we have created for the parents. We have help videos that we have provided to them. But we're really focusing now not just on the technology usage, but really the content. So helping those parents be teachers alongside with us. So giving an opportunity to engage in learning for the parents to know, what does third grade math look like? and how can I help my third grader as they're working through this content. So yes, absolutely, because we know that those parents are going to be critical and working side by side with us, so we have engaged in that work as well.
Okay, great. So one last quick question from Kristen Kennedy, and then we'll go on to our next set of speakers. Kristen, I'm going to make sure you're unmuted to ask. Okay, you're on. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your presentation this morning. I'm very interested in your vetting document. I was wondering if you would be willing to share elements of it or just parts of it. We've been trying to develop one in partnership with academics, and we just keep hitting roadblocks.
Sure. So what I can share very briefly is we actually have an addenda that we require the vendors to agree to the terms for, and I can certainly share some of that. Also, we have a data elements form that they have to complete that explains how they will collect, store, and share data. So I'm happy to share those resources with you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that was an awesome presentation and good discussion, Dr. Durance. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing out.
Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, I'm Michael Hale from VitalSource Technologies. We're a learning company founded by educators to ensure that all students get the learning materials they need. What follows is a short video that introduces you to the platform that last year delivered more than 18 million textbooks right to students when and where they need it.